Hello again there, friends and fans. Raptor here. Welcome back to Broken Arrow. Today I wanted to go over some things with you related to the newest faction in this game for its current beta. Under the Arsenal tab, we can take a look at the brand new hangar slash boom. We have them right here. The Coastal Troops for Russia. Welcome back and good to see everyone here. We're going to cover a lot of these units today and kind of build ourselves a deck as we play this game, available for both PvE and PvP currently in this beta, and available for everybody at this current moment. You can go on to Steam and download Broken Arrow, and it's been fantastic so far. Multiplayer only at the moment, including that PvE mission. You must play at least with one other person, or up to 3 people in total can play that, and then the standard skirmish mode and or custom mode is available for up to 10, 5v5. So pretty cool. This is really cool. It's really great to see so many people playing. There's closed games and people playing custom games, and there's a lot of people playing for the first time with not a lot of game time yet. A lot of people are learning, and that's probably why you're here. So share the news and make sure you subscribe about this video as we review all the new features to the beta and also some of the new things for this new faction, the specialization within Russia. Now, this game is a modern warfare Russia versus United States simulator, essentially. If you know World in Conflict or the war game series from Eugen Systems, Warno, Steel Division, and the like, then you know this game, Regiments 2. This game has a lot of vehicles in it and a lot of stuff to cover. I mean, just take a look at everything that's in the game. I mean, that's just the beta alone. There is a lot to learn here, and this is just a small snippet of it. These are 6 different specializations that are available for now, with more coming on the way when it releases in 2025. So let's go ahead and jump in and take a look at these troops under an area to make a deck, as we would say in the old war game days. We're going to go to the Army Builder. So the hangar is like the Arsenal that lets us take a look at every single vehicle in the game for all the factions, and then the Army Builder allows us to take a look at you know, all these different specializations and make our own. For today's purposes, we're going to go ahead and call this one Test 2, as our other video, oh yes, our other video had the United States and airborne troops primarily showcased, but the game is requiring us to choose 2 specializations, so no matter what, we must create a mixed force here. Now for today's video, we're going to try to make a deck that primarily focuses on those new coastal troops, which have a lot of great mobile infantry and a lot of great aircraft. You can kind of see what they benefit with here between the two by just kind of seeing what they add there. And yeah, you can see a whole battle group size on what specializations they get. The coastal troops with the guards, the tanks are going to be really powerful here, so let's jump in. So if you're not familiar with the game, we're going to take it from the top, and I want this to be a crash course for anybody who hasn't really played these types of games before. And if you've played a lot, then please do comment down below and help out anybody who might be new. There's, first of all, a limit of 10,000 points, but you can go 10% over the limit here in these categories shown for Recon, Infantry, Vehicle, Support, Helicopter, and Air. Essentially, Recon is your eyes and ears in the field, and usually is infantry or like a small light vehicle. Sometimes there's tanks, and sometimes there's drones in here that, of course, qualify as air, but they're all here under the Recon tab because that's their primary purpose. Infantry is both the transports and the troops that will do things like fire from windows with rifles, or from the forest with an Igla, which is like an anti-aircraft, like man-pad. It's basically a man-portable anti-aircraft weapon, and of course there's even grenade launchers and heavy machine guns. Vehicles are everything from tanks, mostly things with treads, and a big mix of other types of vehicles that can do combat that might not necessarily transport troops and have been modified to do other things. Same with support. You could find maybe mortars and things in here, as well as a big opportunity to transport supplies. Your troops in the field will need ammo. No surprise that if your troops get killed, they'll need to be replenished. And if they do happen to take damage, or vehicles take damage, this is the only way to repair them, or you can, of course, retreat from the battlefield and call them out again later. Helicopters, great thing. Helicopters are incredible. They're really like flying tanks that do have anti-aircraft capability, anti-helicopter capability, anti-ground capability for anti-tank, and also rockets to blow up buildings, kill infantry and cover, and also oftentimes a big cannon, like 20 or 30 millimeter, that can shred any light target. And then lastly, we have aircraft, and we'll cover that in full here in today's video. So let's start with Recon. So some of these things are new here. Some of them are kind of self-explanatory. Anything that looks like a naval unit, like the anchors and Poseidon Spear here, are are coastal units. And again, you could break down and find out what these specializations are when you go to that hangar tab and sort by that. So you can definitely see what's different between these. But essentially, these guys are your typical riflemen, but with the ability to look a little bit more ahead. They're like time travels. They can see into the future. No. These guys are actually just regular old infantry with things like AK-103s and RPGs. They can destroy vehicles, they can kill infantry, but they really focus on having a 1700 visual score, and that really helps them to see far ahead. And these units can be paired up with transports in the game too, and a lot of these you can read about and even modify down here in the lower right corner. You can give like an HMG to these and also an autocannon. Whenever you add something like that, you'll see it changing up here. So if you're not exactly sure what to bring, you can see its cost here, and then also its specializations down there, or specifications, as what that might do. And it is a great way to spend the rest of your points. Firstly, what I like to do is add the units that I would like to try out. And again, this whole game is kind of an experiment of adding things that might not work, or might possibly give you an advantage or disadvantage, which could give you extra achievements on Steam, because of course there's a bunch of cool little bonus badges that you can earn. And it's not always about having a high KDR where you have 10 billion kills, zero losses, and the only one on your team fighting. That's everybody's dream, but eventually that gets boring. And this is a great way to keep things lively and having people experiment with new things. And that's how it goes in real war. Oftentimes you don't always get the equipment you need and or transports to get there. So just keep that in mind. So for these troops, we're going to bring these guys in, and we're going to replace that with a BMP 3F, just to have some sort of a mechanized here. Mechanized is usually with tracks. Motorized is usually with wheels. And you can see here that this is a BTR. Now, this is amphibious, and I believe this is as well. And the game will also tell you that it can essentially float. There's a symbol up here in the upper right corner that shows you a little vehicle on water. So these two both can actually go across water. So if you happen to be assaulting a river or a small stream or something like that, these can get across and carry those troops to the other side, and oftentimes can also be dropped in, although these don't have the symbol. So pay attention here as to what the vehicle's capabilities are, like for example popping a smoke screen. So let's bring in that BMP, and we're going to bring in maybe 2 of these. I usually like to bring in 2 of everything if I'm bringing something in at the minimum. So we're going to go ahead and bring in these PDSS troops as well. And these guys here have a 1700 range. There's also a little bit of, here we have armor and health and total number and weight and other things like speed and their ability to remain stealthy. So those are important things that eventually you'll take a deeper look at after you've played a few rounds. But these troops can also swim. That's right. These troops themselves can swim because they're equipped with that type of equipment to be able to swim across rivers and maybe do some sort of a sabotage operation. Perhaps they can swim across a river undetected and go blow up an enemy SAM site, and that would be very powerful. They also have the ability to paradrop, so you could land them somewhere close to a coast and then have them hug along the shore. If the enemy comes close, maybe you can hide out in the water and then come back inside. And then there's all these different perks for them to have ADS rifles or grenade launchers, so you can set them on like destruction duty. So keep in mind that these units can be completely different just by the change of their loadout. So you might think of it as, oh, just infantry with different guns. They must be better guns. Well, you can also bring in frickin' like rocket launchers, and that's really cool. These are grenade launchers here, so let's test those out as well. And this might be recommended, maybe not, but it's certainly a great unit to be able to call into buildings because they can really suppress with those explosions. So that's cool. Here we have Spetsnaz VMF. These troops are paradrop capable, but not able to swim through water, but they're very good in towns because they have grenade launchers and a lot of high rate of fire, big damage guns, and that's the assault team for that. Or you could do a fire support team, which is kind of more stealthy with SVDs. They're a little more snipery, long range, keep at a distance, observe the enemy, and I believe this might be an anti-material rifle here, so they're more than capable of taking out lighter vehicles, something along the lines of the equivalent of like a BTR. They could definitely do some damage to something like this if you were doing a mirror match against Russia, or the equivalent here will be a LAV for the US Marines or any sort of light transport, something with wheels. That thing can definitely knock it on off its heels, so keep that in mind. Go ahead and pop 2 of those into the deck, and that's also amphibious. So we got a nice variety of different vehicles here for our Recon, and not to be underestimated is also our tanks here. Now, if we were playing as the other deck with VDV, we would have drones, and unfortunately for this build, that's going to be one of our disadvantages, is that we don't often have recon for ourselves, so we'll have to rely on our allies to be popping drones all the time for us to be able to see, or to have infantry hidden in constantly in tree lines and trying to get behind enemy lines and in buildings that might be able to see a huge swath of land. But if you can't do that, if there's very limited areas to hide, you can force your way into an area by having a T90M with a lot of armor and a lot of damage. This is great for the tanks too. This can stay with a group of tanks and really be an armored spearhead that can't be stopped and can see a lot of stuff. Of course, everything can be stopped, but it certainly will take a lot of firepower and attention from the enemy to stop your push, and you might be able to see some valuable targets in the back, buying enough time for your allies to be able to hit them with artillery or airstrikes or something of that nature. Again, we can modify some more stuff here. We're going to hold off for now and maybe put just one of those in there, and that gives us about 300 points of maneuverable point expenditure. So we can kind of modify a few extra things here. I'm going to bring in an autocannon on our BRDM. This would be great to get behind enemy lines and be able to interrupt enemy transports or something like that. And that also could shoot down helicopters. Unlikely, but it certainly has the capability of doing so. And this thing, this is basically your commie RV. It's hilarious. It's basically an unarmed observation post that just looks like a massive surveillance van. I haven't used this yet, but it certainly has a big range at 2,400. That's even better than our tank here, which was at 1,700, and our infantry too, that was at 1,700. So maybe it'd be fun to actually use this thing. You can also get an armed variant that has an PKP, like small machine gun on top, but this is something that maybe would be best to put somewhere behind your lines, so that way if the enemy happens to sneak behind with a helicopter, you can keep an eye on it, or put it towards the front and try to keep it somewhere near the open, so if the enemy moves into an open field, you can keep an eye on that as well. So yeah, GLA radar van is basically what this thing is, isn't it? Man, it's very much like the GLA radar van. So let's go ahead and pop one of those in there too. And we also have ourselves a 30mm BRM-3K. These are great little tankettes. These are infantry fighting vehicles, but I like to think of these almost like the PT-76, which is a small tank, but yet armed with a 30mm autocannon, which then can be upgraded to a 57mm gun, which is also very devastating. And I believe this thing is this an autocannon? Yeah, magazine size, so it certainly can fire very quickly. So this thing, this would shred. We're going to go ahead and bring one of these in, and as you can see, we're over our budget by 35 points, but that's totally fine. We can be 10% over our budget for this category, and we cannot be over the main total budget, so keep that in mind, that we're able to overspend, and I'm just kind of learning that now. That's something that I've kind of learned about in the new version of the game, so pretty cool. Now, infantry. This is kind of more of what we just saw. This is more specialization of the infantry. These troops here are grenade launchers. Grenade launchers are awesome. They have a grenade launcher with them, a 40mm, great to put into buildings, great to put into any area that you need to lock down that infantry might pass through. So if you have a choke point in a town where you're in a big building and you think that enemy troop transports might pass through, or enemy recon might be nearby, this could immediately, very quickly, eliminate enemy infantry. And this is good in conjunction with other teams. For example, you could have a anti-tank team, like a close-range anti-tank team, like an RPG, destroy an enemy vehicle, and then the troops that are surviving from that can be quickly finished off by these grenade launchers, and they can all fire together. They're not just equipped with those, though. Some of the troops here have AK-12s, and they're able to fire at the infantry, so they could defend themselves against a close-range attack, but these are very important to keep at a medium to long range of 800 meters, so 50 to 800 for that AGS, or 400 meters in total. So that's their minimum range. They cannot engage lower than that 50. So keep that in mind too. Now, this is probably the meanest and most versatile piece of equipment in the entire game. I continue to see this Barbarous, and this thing is an absolute powerhouse. This is amazing, this damn thing. I rarely ever see this thing destroyed. I've only lost a few of these my entire career playthrough, and this is basically the T-14 Armata of IFVs. This thing is an incredible workhorse. It's almost indestructible. It's the enemy final boss. That's what it is. This thing has an insane amount of armor. is very, very hard to kill, even from like above and below. And this is basically a foot in the door. If you must absolutely push forward and push the enemy out of a position, except no substitutes, this thing is your battering ram and your wedge to keep the door open. It's really cool. This thing is very versatile too, with a couple of different things you can get here. Module that adds a 57mm like autocannon over the 30mm, and it's already equipped with Ataka ATGMs, which has looks like just 2 there, and it's very, very accurate, very deadly, high rate of fire, very intimidating, and this shreds infantry and tanks alike. So if you're going to be bringing in tanks, bringing one of these to support those tanks and some infantry too is really good. And in fact, one thing you could do is take these AGS-40s, for example, and empty them out of this vehicle, put Recon in it, so you can have a heavily armored Recon vehicle that you can interchange all these units with. I'm going to go ahead and do 2 of these AGS-40s and the Barbarous, because I want to try to put these into a town and lock it down with grenade launchers and autocannons, really keep the enemy away, and if they get close, really punish them for attacking the position. Now this is cool. This is a new unit for the coastal troops, and these guys really have a first of all, really good numbers. Like they're I think equal to the Marines. I think it's a squad of 13, no 14 men. The Marines, I believe, have 13. The U.S. Marines. This is 14 squad members there, and that's a lot of guys, man. This is unfortunately limited to 2, but these guys are kind of like Marines, but like extra Marines. Like they're like a little bit more than the U.S. Marines. From what I've seen and what I've heard, they're just very capable, and they're equipped with something that's really good, the RPG-27, which is devastating, 6 times AT RPGs, so that's good. So rockets, 105mm, really great to lock down a neighborhood, really great to push into an area to be able to hold it or expel the enemy by doing CQB, by going into close quarter combat against like another group of perhaps U.S. Marines or something. Always soften them up, but these guys can also use smoke and come in via paratrooper. So these guys are capable of being dropped via plane or dropped via like the water. Like they kind of have an amphibious vehicle here for that. So yeah, you can bring them in that way. But honestly, I think these guys might be, even though they have the little, you know, the Marine like anchor badge here, this might be a placeholder or whatnot, but these guys I honestly feel are I don't know, Marine paras would be amazing, and that's kind of what these guys represent with that ability to do that. So very cool stuff. So I definitely recommend trying these guys out. I'm going to bring them in on foot and absolutely put them in there. And now we have our Gronostreliki, which are basically the troops that we saw before, like the AGS troops, but they are a little bit more than that. Think of a mix of the Recon that we saw before, that larger squad of guys by the name of... it was the one that started with the R, the Redzvetska or whatever. These guys are kind of a mix of those. Now, these are mountain troops. You can kind of see with their snow blinding glasses. You can see the ice pick in the backpack. These guys are supposed to go up into the heights, and they're really like tough fighters. They all are, really. But these guys are really supposed to be against the elements, and what's important here is their equipment. And even though they're supposed to be in the mountains, I think they're very good for fighting in a different type of mountain range, which is your urban environment, right? All those cliffs of the massive buildings. And this Metis here is a really cool, like, semi-active missile, and this is really nice to use against enemy vehicles, and that's really nice for kind of medium range engagements up to 800 meters. And I think it does a little bit more damage than the RPG. It's 550mm heat, so a little more than that 150 something that we saw before. But anyway, these guys have a little more range, a little bit more maybe tenacity than the AGS troops, but overall just kind of fun to use, and really I would not use these guys to clear buildings, but definitely bring them in towards the end if the enemy's evacuating, or if you're trying to lock down an area where you put them on a street corner. These guys are really good for kind of being your frontline defense in an urban environment. Okay, here's your guards, Motostreliki. These are basic infantry. They kind of come with a mix of things that you may have seen before. We have ourselves LMGs and some other rifles, and then also your RPGs there. So these guys are your all-around fighters, and you could also bring them in the Barbarous too, but that could get quite expensive. Remember, we're trying to keep our budget down on this tab now, since we spent a little bougie on our previous investments, but we can invest a little bit more here with, like, for example, adding the 57mm here, and maybe some also defensive systems there. And then we're going to increase that up to 4, because these guys are really good, and so is that vehicle, and that's not too expensive. And we can then finally bring in the last troops, which These guys are really nice. These are your kind of riot police, bomb squad, CQB. These guys deal with it all. You can see the riot shield there, the breach shield, and these guys would be for, and with their flashbangs, clearing enemy fortifications, or really buildings that they have garrisoned. So I want to use these guys a lot more. I never get a chance to get them close because enemies that I fought are pretty smart and layer things together. This is good for sending these guys into a building where the enemy won't come out, like maybe one of those grenade launchers, and they can fight those troops. So these might be good for rushing a position that has a specialization in it, like an HMG or a AGS, that kind of thing. So but regardless, they're also good for holding buildings too. So if you're trying to defend a position, might be a good idea. They have the assault shield and then the thermobolic RPG, and that's kind of neat. They're also able to fire up to. Is there a total here? Whoa! All right. Oh, wait. There it is. Okay, so we have 20 to 150, and I believe this is a thermobolic, like flame round, that kind of thing. So. Anyway, we'll bring a couple of these guys in the standard transport and leave it as is, just to try them out. They're kind of fun. And you can see we're way over budget here. Well, not way, but pretty high over the budget. So we're heavily investing in our infantry and our recon for now. And then we're going to go on to vehicles, which is what our classification is supposed to specialize in, because we've got tanks. Coastal troops also have some tanks that they add to this. We have ourselves a, and I haven't really found a good use for this thing yet, but basically it's like an AT gun. It's mounted on that RV that we saw before, and this thing is kind of like an artillery gun, but meant to be AT. It's very cheap, very light, 45 points. This is your last line of defense, last ditch effort kind of defense. That's not going to do so well against the enemy attack. But they can be upgraded to have a 57mm AA gun, so that's cool. And this also shreds infantry too, so this might be really good against paratroopers. If you're paranoid about paratroopers, that could be a good setup. We also have ourselves a 30mm cannon of that, and also a, I believe this, yeah, 30 as well, with the ATGM mounted on top of it too. So these are really, with that giant bulldozer there, it'd be really cool in this game if we were able to build defenses, like tell this vehicle to hunker down and make it harder to destroy. And with that autocannon on top, it would be like almost like an AA emplacement and make it a little harder to kill. So hopefully that's a feature that comes soon to make that a little bit more viable. And I haven't seen anything like that yet, but again, this is just kind of to plop down. Even for 75 points, you could make like a little bunker, basically. So think of it that way. We'll bring a couple of those for fun, right? Okay, so this was one that everyone loved from Wargame, the Terminator. I think this is a T-72 chassis here. And this thing is mean beyond belief. The Barbarous is like kind of a upgraded cousin of this in a way. Like the concept is the same for the Barbarous, but this was just like, hey, let's just keep adding guns, brother. And so this is, and we even have the AGS variant of that, can fire grenade launchers. This is a bunch of ATGMs and a bunch of autocannons mounted onto this thing. And this is great for urban assault. This is great for just deleting infantry and tanks. And you might want to throw one of these into your tank pushes. Like just bring these along to shoot down any sort of, helicopters that might get too close if you don't have AA. Or if you're defending too, this thing can buy time. It's hard to kill. It's a big investment to try to destroy it, because it does take a couple missiles to destroy, and it's very good with like Recon too, because if Recon spots something, this can come up pretty quick and make short work of an enemy vehicle that's exposed with those missiles or autocannons, and then get the hell out of there. So it's a great fast assault vehicle, even though it's tracked. We have ourselves an option for the Cornet here, which is like a blank battle platform for now, but it does have like, these are ATGMs, and they're kind of, I wonder if it says anything more about that. Targeting of vehicles and infantry too, yeah. So this is kind of a missile launcher. It's real basic, but it's mounted on that chassis that those BMP-3s are mounted on. And I haven't really had a use for these at all, but they're really cool. And I think you can see the weapon deploy out of the top. Yeah, there you go, cool. There's like a little radar dish too. So, I don't know, kind of neat. And this is, oh man, this would be great anti-aircraft actually. Maybe it does have the capability of firing at those too. But I've not heard or seen this before being used. But very interesting weapons platform I want to give a try to. But this is also PT-76, the thing I mentioned before. It kind of reminds me of that. And this is a classic like old Soviet light tank that I thought was paratroop capable, but it's amphibious. and so it's a good support for maybe your infantry pushes with transports. It still has a 76mm gun that could do damage, or of course that 57mm. I keep promoting that 57 because, man, being able to get multiple 57mm shots is so much more devastating than 76. So just keep that in mind. A really fun thing to toy around with, and not too many points, and so you can beef up your forces that way. But here is the king, the Armata. Now, you've probably seen this before. This is not new to Coastal Forces. A lot of this stuff hasn't, but it's been one that I've enjoyed using as the kind of the keystone of my assaults. And this is just heavily armored and is basically like the Barbarous, but the tank version of that. And again, there's a lot of stuff to modify with that, so keep in mind that one. T-80BV and T-80Us are kind of the same and kind of different. These are old Soviet main battle tanks that have some differences to them, but they can be lumped in together because they're kind of the same tank, T-80, but the BV and the U do have some differences to them. Like, for example, one of them could be modified a little bit to be upgraded to almost be like a T-90 in a way, 245 points and tons of armor on that. And this one could be upgraded to the 2018 model, which, again, they're trying to make all of these T-80s almost like the T-90s here, and giving them, instead of making new tanks, just modernizing the T-80s to try to be T-90s. But then the T-90s themselves have been upgraded to almost be a step down from the Armata, but yet, I don't know. These seem to be a little more capable in greater numbers. I don't know. The Armata has been great, but the T-90Ms seem to be the ones to get all the kill, but the Armata gets all the attention. And look at how monstrous the Armata is compared to that one. Yeah. This one is your big target that can take all the hits. Meanwhile, the T-90s just seem to lay down a lot of fire. That's my experience so far, but I have seen Armatas do a lot of damage, too, to enemy groups. So we're going to grab a couple of T-90 regular battle tanks here. I'm actually going to grab 3 of those, and I'm also going to try to grab 3 of those. Actually, I'm going to grab a T-90 and an Armata, and then I'm going to grab a couple of these T-80s, too, to keep things a little cheaper. Now, we still have plenty of points to spend. So I'm going to add another Armata to that one, and then I'm going to also add... Oh, and I may have missed a few things here next to that. We have our Conquerors. We're going to give them a bad fur day with the Cornet. Oh, yes. Double missiles on both sides. We got 4 there. And this is like the typical armored car that then has different options for like an anti-grenade, or rather a... Oh, actually, wait. Oh, cool. The Cornet actually comes with the grenade launcher. Sorry. Yeah. Is that a 30mm? Oh, yeah, 30mm heat. Interesting. Okay. Well, that's capable of destroying infantry and tanks alike. And, yeah, this was the thing I mentioned before. I just missed that one there. So, cool. All right, that's all of those. I think this is okay for now. The Coastal group might want to save a few points here from the vehicle tab to add some things to something else later. So we can always come back. Keep in mind, you can always add more things later on or modify based on your points. But again, with the Coastal troops, I think we want more infantry and recon. We want to know where the enemy is and where to block them. Support. We have ourselves some artillery here. Some of these are capable of cluster rounds. Some of these are capable of smoke. Mortars aren't completely useless, but the ranges of artillery in this game feel very short compared to other games that we played. So if you want to lay down suppressing fire for an infantry assault, first lay down smoke, then start suppressing the enemy's position with things like these. The Nona. You can see here when it's looks like a mortar shell, almost like a baseball bat with a fat end. 120mm HE. Pretty much anything smaller than that is usually mortar, or that size or smaller. Other than that, you've got artillery at 122, big artillery at 152, and more mortars here. So these two are mortars. The other ones were artillery, and then even more artillery with the capability of firing cluster rounds or extendo range. So you can kind of get... I think these are rocket-assisted shells or something like that. Anyway, they're able to fire a lot further, and firing further is good, and I can't decide sometimes between the cluster or the ability to just shoot further than the enemy. Keeping them further away is good because it increases the time in which they'll fire back at you, because their shells, if they fly at you, gives you extra time to get the hell out of there. So just keep in mind that all these artillery units are pretty good, but you do need to kind of figure out if you want to bring any, and if you do, I would definitely say start lighter to support your infantry. So we're going to go ahead and bring in a Nona. Yeah, we'll bring in one of these. Actually, let's bring in 2 of these with the upgrade there for the extendo range. And then we're going to go on to a couple of these too. I'm going to try those extendo ranges as well. So some light mortars for the infantry support, and some heavy artillery for destroying big targets like Patriots and high-value targets like that. Now, the coastal troops are weird. They've got these, like, almost like we're fighting in Alaska-type vehicles. It's strange. They bring in, like, these command platforms. This is something, I don't know, you'd see from Warhammer 40K. But basically, these are like towed weapon platforms. So the Magnolia here is a 120mm mortar that is towed. So I don't know if it comes with extra supply versus other mortars like that, or if there's a way to maybe do that. But you can even give them cluster rounds. But very strange to see a towed like building that is like, it looks like a tank turret, but it's a mortar. I don't know, so many things in one. It's like the Pontiac Aztec of communism. It's really weird. Or oligarchies. It's strange. I don't know. I like it, and I want to bring one of them in at least to see how it works. Now, this is your quote-unquote Scud launcher. This is your ballistic missile system. This is your cruise missile system, and this thing's a lot of fun. I recommend it for players who've had a couple of games or 2 or 3. You're going to want to keep this thing on the move, and it comes already equipped with 2 ballistic missiles, which can fire some big-o missiles a long range, but everybody kind of shoots these down. Oh boy, look at that. Because I think that vehicle's excited to see us, guys. If I didn't know any better. Patriots and a lot of other weapon systems can just shoot these down very quickly, but if you happen to destroy an enemy's anti-aircraft or anti-missile cover, this opens the door tremendously to pushing them back even further by destroying or landing Hail Marys on like contested positions or bridge crossings, and those big missiles alone can do a great job of clearing the enemies out. Basically, think of it as a mini tactical nuke, and we'll take a look at the tactical nuke in just a little bit. But also, I kind of recommend this 4x4 cruise missile. This has been pretty helpful at firing at enemy artillery, and even if it gets close, they get the message. And you always want to deter the enemy and to do something that isn't really calculated here on the right side, which is kind of to intimidate. You want to mislead them, intimidate them, and try to kind of keep them guessing as to what you're going to do. So even if you happen to throw a missile into the fray that you know is going to get shot down, this could try to overwhelm their AA net. Maybe you have somebody coming in with SEED, which is something to, it's an anti-radiation missile system that basically destroys enemy anti-aircraft. So the more missiles in the air, the less capable those systems are of stopping those missiles, and one is going to hit eventually. So this is a good way to smother the enemy, blanket their positions with missiles, and it works. It works, and that's why it's here. So we'll grab 1 or 2 of those, maybe. I think one is enough for now. Now, a shame is that we can't take 2 of these and arm them differently. We have to take 2 of the same. So one of them can't be ballistic missiles, and one of them can't be cruise missiles. So, and that's the same for all the tanks and infantry too. They all have to go with the same specialization. The Berg, I've tried this a little bit. It's a kind of short range, 3,800 meter artillery, 130mm HE, and it's cool. It works. It hits targets, but it's like I haven't really been able to use it as effectively as I wanted to. But it's fast, and so it's halfway between like a mortar because of its speed on wheels, but then also like heavy artillery because it's got the 130mm HE, and it really packs a punch, as well as if you upgrade to like mixed, and then you can kind of like pick HE or AA rounds, and then this thing becomes like an anti-aircraft battery in a way. So this can fire at helicopters, and it's a very interesting way to do that. So yes, it does have the capability of firing at infantry, vehicles, and then also helicopters too. So a great point defense for like if you're against an American airborne deck, you could set this up and really cover the field. So this thing can turn really quickly. It's a very cool weapon, and I wish we had a few more of these because it would be great with its artillery and with its ability to fire as a anti-aircraft gun. This Driftsaya, whatever the hell. Yeah, this thing also is a little bit more like the PT-76 in terms of it being like the 57mm, and it's a support weapon, but it feels more like a vehicle to me. I've seen this brought out as well for additional like autocannons on the field, but I think this is just here to kind of run out the decks a little bit, and also it could be upgraded to, this is why I think a lot of people use it, is not because of the 57mm, which people have been adding that to kind of increase the troop transports and like give them cover because they move at the same speed or the same type, but this I think is what everybody wants to do, the Cessna missiles, which is anti-aircraft support, and really preferably against helicopters. It can fire at aircraft, but helicopters, got a really like high kill rate from what I've seen. A player calling out 1 or 2 of these and keeping all the choppers away. And if they don't, they get shot down pretty quickly. This missile system here at 18 is pretty damn effective, and you get a lot of them. So it can sit out there for a long time on its own without having to be resupplied so long as you have it hidden. Another system that can do just that is the Tor system. And this is a kind of a 2-part system of this, like we saw before. There's also the Tor M1 down here too, which is kind of like an upgraded book. So anyway, the Tor M1 is a really cool system. Both this and this are capable of shooting down incoming enemy missiles, like seed and things like that, so they can protect themselves from incoming enemy weaponry. And this one's like that, but just has, I think, less missiles. There's a count of, let's see, 8 there and 16 here. So this is kind of more of your permanent defenses. Now, these are coastal troops, so you'd think that they would lie in wait for the enemy. If the enemy is going to be attacking and they're defending the coast, then these troops here are going to be lying in wait for them. So they've kind of set up some temporary positions, a little bit more permanent temporary positions. So keep that in mind. These are great for helicopters, great for aircraft. This is incredibly slow, and this is pretty slow too, but they are incredibly high value targets on the field when players see those. So keep that in mind. This is a supply variant of that. When you click on this, you can also bring out supply with this, and it'll help to supply all the things that you've seen before in all of these tabs. Now, I think for now we're going to go with one of these Tor, and we can also upgrade that to 16 missiles, just like the other one. It just increases the points by another 50, but I think we'll kind of keep that as is, and we'll bring 2 of those along as well. And then I wanted to bring the Cessna too, which was great. Just adding these a little bit later after talking about them. And then we have ourselves the big boys. These are like the Patriot equivalents. These things are your long-range, big O anti-aircraft missiles that I'm not exactly sure if they can fire at incoming missiles, both of them, but they certainly do have a chance to pack a punch with enemy aircraft. Oh, actually, they do here have the ability to shoot down missiles. So there you go. Very helpful. So both of these are kind of the same idea, but different in their points and their capabilities. This one's a little faster, and I see more players using this because it's new, but I've seen both being very successful. However, the second system carrying way more missiles, and so it has a lot more survivability, independence, really. It can be out there for a long time without needing to be babysat or resupplied. And of course, remember, these have radars, so they'll need to be turned on to be able to engage enemy helicopters and aircraft, or, well, aircraft and missiles and things like that, but it'll make you a target because they'll be able to track that with seed. So these things that are anti-aircraft are just like that. So I think we'll keep one of those in our deck, and unfortunately that's fills up our whole deck, but I did want to show off the Buratino, the Burrito, or the Brian Boitano, as people call it. The TOS-1, this is a basically a T-72 chassis with a big O missile launcher on it that can fire like incendiary rockets, and this can burn the enemy out and deny them from moving through an area for a while. It's got 220mm rockets times 30. It takes a long time to reload. It's slow, but it's here because it's effective, and it's something that's pretty intimidating too when the enemy sees it firing off. We have our Biryusa. This thing is your 4-barreled Shilka, but upgraded, modernized, modified, and is capable of firing with Igla missiles too. So it's got 4 back there and can fire at enemy helicopters. That main gun ain't great. I'm gonna be honest. I've not really seen much come of this. I wish this would be a much longer burst to make it more effective, but you want something with a minigun, like constant fire, not just blast from the AZP-23, 23mm gun on that one. The Iglas are okay, but this thing is like, I don't know, unless you upgrade it, and then when you do it's expensive, I don't know if it's worth it, but that's just me. All right, on to our next tab then, helicopters. Pretty short and sweet for the helicopters for this deck because there's not much at all. You can see 3 here, to which I would immediately recommend getting an Mi-838T. This thing is great for transporting troops, but even better your supplies to the front lines, and then you can have some of those other supply vehicles pick those up. So we're going to go ahead and go with 2 of these. And as I mentioned, by the way, in our previous section, we were out of room. And the only thing really that could transport cargo for us is this big thing. Like, that's crazy. So you're not going to have any smaller trucks be able to bring supplies around. So this thing is basically going to set up a giant pile that all the other vehicles and infantry are going to have to come back to. And that kind of sucks, because if your infantry are heavily wounded and they need ammo and stuff to hold the line, you're going to have to land one of those helicopters close, or do something with the maybe someone else will give you light trucks. You don't always have to rely on yourself. You can also team up with a friend and start making decks that are slightly different, where you can both have the same exact specializations, but you can have differences in that deck to where it'd be like, don't worry about supplies, man, I got you here. And don't worry about anti-aircraft, I got you here. So you go on the tanks and infantry, that kind of thing. So where they lack, you can succeed and kind of mix things up. So teaming up is very important. But we do have something important here too. Those missiles that I mentioned before, anti-radiation, those seed missiles. This is great for firing at enemy AA positions like Patriots and stuff. And this is kind of a hard target to hit. Helicopters aren't invulnerable and can be hit pretty often, but I see a lot of initial missiles missing from helicopters, or them being able to take up to 3 big hits. So this could be a good system to get rid of enemy AA, and it also comes with some rockets, which I think we'll go with the smaller ones, because those can really shred enemy infantry. So we'll add maybe 2 of those to our deck there, and actually we can't, because that's over the limit there of 10%. But we can bring in a KA-29. No, we can't. All right, so that's pretty much it for the helicopters for this one. Coastal troops, huge area to defend along the coast, but no real helicopters for them, unfortunately. And then on to air. So this deck is not capable of dropping nukes. If you'd like to do that, you will need a different aircraft, which we did show in a previous video for that. The Americans use the B-1 Lancer, and I think, what is it, guys? Is it the TU, is it the 160 or something with the 60? But it's a big O, it looks like the Arc Bird from Ace Combat, right? It's like a big O swooping, it looks like the Lancer, right? And it looks like this. It's a huge thing that comes with a cruise missile. But this one, instead, is the TU-23M3. Ugly and super cool. I love it, man. Really cool stuff. This thing is capable of firing cruise missiles itself. It also has cluster bombs. You can mix it up with all sorts of different stuff, smart bombs. A lot of people are using this to call in cruise missiles, and it has 2 of those right there. You can see the big boys mounted there and there. And these have a big O explosion. So think of them as like a mega artillery shell, or a mini nuke. Like, they're really good at blowing up a huge area. So if there's a concentration of enemy troops, you might be able to sneak through with one of those. Speaking of troops, this is your troop transport. The AN-72P can hold up to 52 men, up to 32,000 in its capacity of cargo, and this is really cool for your paratroopers. So for some of the infantry that we covered earlier, Recon or light vehicles, they can all pop in here, and or supply, and this could be a great way to bring things to the front. But these often, aircraft like this, the troop transports, are like prime targets that people can't resist. Drones and these damn troop transporters, people go for right away. Like, they'll call out things that haven't even been invented yet. It's crazy. Just to shoot these down. It's really crazy. But very good details on these vehicles, though. I'm really impressed with that, and that's neat. By the way, this thing is capable of carrying in some weapons, too, some gun pods and some rockets. So, you know, there's that. I guess you could fire at a landing zone before circling around and landing, but, I mean, highly unlikely. You got your MiG-29s. These are all multi-role fighters, and there's a lot to go through here. So basically what you're going to want to do is try to make these truly multi-role. I would certainly recommend the multi-role in terms of bringing some bombs, and I think they're already set up pretty well. This one actually is set up to be more a little on the AA side. So this is meant to engage enemy aircraft at a close to medium distance, and also has some fuel pods so that way it can stay up longer and engage longer. But honestly, I don't really see a lot of people using fuel pods. It's just shoot bring all the missiles, bring everything, shoot as much as you can, and then GTFO. So that's really good for that. 310 points though is spendy, but we need some sort of air there, and we're also going to do that with the. Actually, I'm going to bring in 2 of those if we can. Ooh, we're really close to the end of our points. Oof. Well, we'll keep that because I'd rather have some anti-air. But this is the Su-33. This is kind of more of an anti-ground variant of the MiG-29 in my mind. They look kind of the same. They're certainly different aircraft completely, but I mean, to me, this just feels like the bigger brother, who is just capable of being like, it's like the MiG-29 and the Su-25 had a baby, and this thing is beefy and. Well, I mean, it could certainly take a couple hits, but this is your multi-role fighter. Like, this thing can do like a lot more. I mean, it's crazy. You have your rockets, you have your semi-active, you know, like that's your anti-aircraft missiles, and then tons and tons of bombs. I think this thing is probably better at being a bomber with a couple of anti-aircraft missiles attached to it, and that seems to be the way they have it set up here too. Well, they have it with rockets, but honestly, if you just bring in a bunch of bombs and try to target things, bigger bombs seem to be better too, especially if you're dropping them accurately. So you're probably going to want to go for something like 500-pound bombs. Blanketing an area, not as effective as just hitting right on the target or right next to it. And bombers are pretty accurate, especially if you have air superiority, and that's probably what you're going to want to have. So just keep this thing as something to only bring out if you're fighting an air battle that you're winning, and then try to bomb the enemy too, or to protect itself against maybe a drone. Maybe this thing could fly in, shoot a drone, and then also drop some bombs. Speaking of dropping bombs, we have ourselves cruise missiles from the Tu-142, man. That just looks absolutely ancient. But look at those cruise missiles. You got up to 8 of these things, and then you've also got a bunch of bombs that you can call out, including a 3,000-pound bomb, so that's your like mini nuke as well. Your dumb cruise missile, your ultra mega ultra dumb cruise missile, is just a big boom, and that's it. And I've seen people try to use that too, but the Tu-142 is just too slow. It just, I don't know. The delivery platform, not great, but this could be good for making a deck for the co-op PvE mode, which is another feature of this game, and to get more bang for your buck, this is a great, unit to call out to be able to bomb in those positions, and that's going to be a whole game mode, and you might not always want to make stuff for PvP. This might also be good for PvE and or just for general testing, but who knows, maybe you'll get through with this. But this thing is incredibly slow, but the aircraft is capable of defending itself with a couple of guns, so that's nice, I guess. You have your Tu-22M3, which we did cover, that has the cruise missiles as well, and then the Yak-38, which is really neat. It's like a Harrier, and although it kind of performs differently, it does have the, it's basically copy my homework, but, don't copy my homework. But anyway, this thing, for the most part, is just kind of a bomber, or close-range anti-aircraft. But honestly, just zipping in with some bombs. Or, as I've seen players using this, really smart to use gun pods on this. If you get yourself some gun pods and some bombs, if enemy helicopters are rearming or refueling or whatever, you can go ahead and throw this away for a cheap 165 points and try to take out some enemy helicopters. Very fast. You could drop bombs on their supply points. It's a low risk, high reward. I mean, it's the cheapest thing in the whole deck that we have here for aircraft. So pretty nice. Pretty nice indeed. All right, folks. I want to save that. That is pretty much it for our kind of first look at the coastal troops and for Russia as they're updated now for the new beta. And, of course, some stuff you can toy around with the PvE mode. And it's really quite nice. There's a lot of great people in the community who are very helpful, and people who are, like trying to just get everybody to try other things. There are certainly the ultra mega super sweaty guys who will do anything and everything it takes in order to try to figure out a way to win. And that just sucks for the new players who are just trying to learn. And but there is a system to try to balance that. So that's good. They're trying to do some sort of a skill-based matchmaking. And that's nice for newer people who might be interested in this to actually not feel overwhelmed when they want to get into some competitive modes. But again, this game is going to have single player and PvE and PvP and many different game modes that are great, and of course will be coming out sometime in 2025. So if you'd like to see more of this game, make sure you subscribe to the channel, turn on that notification bell. Thanks for smashing like and just being awesome, and I will see you all next time for more of Broken Arrow. Thanks again, everybody, for watching. Have a great day.